All right, it looks like we are live on YouTube, so we will get started. I will call the meeting to order and remind everyone to please disclose of any pecuniary interest at the appropriate time. And we will go right to the minutes of the previous council meeting of September 13th, 2021. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file those minutes. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell, and seconded by Councillor Morris. Thank you. Any questions, errors, or omissions on those minutes? All in favor of receiving and filing those? That is carried. Thank you. And since there's no business arising from the previous meetings, we'll go to scheduled meetings and events. See any major changes to that? And if there's no questions or comments on those, we will go to councillors' commitments and items. Do we have any councillors that have any new commitments to add to our list today?
I'm away from October 7th to 12th.
Okay, we will make that adjustment. If there's none other, then we will go to councillors' items. I'm going to start with Councillor White tonight.
Nothing for me tonight.
All right, Councillor Morris.
I got two things. I got a complaint about a property standards officer. I guess she was wandering around this lady's property and she had no idea who this person was, and she kind of freaked out. I think maybe they should go to the door and identify themselves and be dressed with some kind of, logo or something that shows what they are. Like, she's just lucky a dog didn't get stuck on her or something. Like, you can't just walk around people's property. She's legally can do it, but without acknowledging their presence, I think. I'd like that to be spoken to her or mentioned to her. The other thing is I had another complaint.
Councillor Morris, I'm wondering if Amanda could maybe clarify the general process for us.
Thank you, Mayor Benson and Councillor Morris, for bringing that to our attention. I believe maybe we can connect after about the property, but we did receive a similar notice after Andrew conducted a site visit at, I believe, the same property. And the property standards officer was there first and was in their vehicle driving up and down and walking. My understanding was, though, only on the right of way without announcing themselves. So they were on the roadway. And at their first visit, they were unable to find the reported infraction, which is why they went back with Andrew. And I believe at that time they made themselves known. Okay. But it is noted. Thank you. And we will, I will note that to our officer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other one is for Andrew. I got another complaint from another individual on the traffic lines on Churchill that they were in bad shape. Painting, just if you can have a look at it, or if the guys are doing painting in the area, if they could touch it up, I'd greatly appreciate it.
I'll have a look. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I've got. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go on to Councillor Mitchell.
Nothing for me tonight, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Westgate.
I just had a couple. One Andrew knows about. It's the curb down on Warwick Street in front of Sharp's house. Is there anything you can do about that, Andrew?
Yep, that's been taken care of.
Okay. The other is the Optimus came to me today and they're losing their insurance for tending bar again. I think it was about a year ago they sent us email asking if we could get it through our insurance. And as far as I know, nobody ever got back to them, or I don't know whether we looked into it or not. But the Optimists do raise a lot of money and they put it back into the community. And if they haven't got insurance, it's going to be bad for the community and the Optimists. So I was wondering if we could contact our insurance agent and see what they could do.
Our insurance will not touch it.
They will not touch it?
Not a third party like that. I have been referred to somebody out of force that might underwrite it, but even that is a big might.
Can we still do it on an event like we did before?
For now, we can. But I'm expecting our insurance company to even pull that back.
if we can do it on an event like we did before, I think they were paying 6,000 something anyway. So if it was just by the event and we're charged what, do you know what it is?
Not off the top of my head.
Something I thought.
Yeah.
They could live with that too.
Yeah.
Until
I'll
they
explore
can-
it more.
What
How
was
does
that,
the
Deborah?
fire? He said he would explore it more. I'm
Okay,
just wondering how our firemen's association does it. Like they must have to have insurance.
they probably have it through the Firemen's Association.
Oh, okay. Amanda, did
So
you
if we
have a
can look
comment
into
on
that and get back to them, it runs out the end of October. So this is something we need to look at right away. But if we could go event by event, the way it's been the last year, that would be cheaper than what they were paying.
Counselor White?
Just a note on the insurance industry right now. Most companies aren't writing any new insurance to anybody, and renewals are extremely high, probably 60% to 100% raises in premiums this year across the board, and it's all due to COVID. So I think we'll have a hard time doing anything for the optimists at all.
So maybe we'll have to go event by event. And we can still do that through our insurance, I believe.
If that's
A lot
possible.
are pulling back and stuff. Yeah,
I
I-
envision them pulling it back, but we'll investigate.
they're gonna have to have insurance before they plan an event now. Like if you're doing it per event, they're gonna have to confirm that that event's insured before they even plan it. So.
Jerry, did they say why they lost their insurance?
It's just the insurance company that they were dealing with quit doing like for bars and stuff. There's
Okay.
a lot of, that's the only reason that I know.
Okay,
Now they're still looking for someplace else, but if there's anything we could do, it would sure help them out.
Can we just do that as direction to staff then? Yes. Thank you. We would appreciate it. Yes, I agree with Councillor Westgate. The Optimist does raise an awful lot for the community, and they also provide a good service to the community. So if we could keep them running, that would be great. Was that all you had for
Yes, it was.
tonight? Okay, the only thing I had, and this was a suggestion from one of our, from one of the people in town, was when the ice surface does reopen, he was wondering if it would be possible, and I didn't know if this was even possible to do like a live stream of the ice surface for the parents who are not allowed in the arena. And I didn't know, I'm not tech savvy. I didn't know how difficult that would be. But I just wanted to give staff a heads up that that was an interest for some parents, just so that they could sit and watch if they're not allowed in the arena. So we could just kind of throw that out there and leave it there for now. If there's nothing else, then we will move on to staff items, and we will get a verbal update from Teresa Clutchin on the status of the ice making in Watford.
Thanks, Mayor Ramboats. So today was the target to start making ice, and we met that target. So the refrigeration plant started. We did have to do some repairs. Our dehumidifiers are not working. We were able to get parts and one service today, and using fans, we have started making ice. And then we'll have the other dehumidifiers repaired as soon as the parts come in. But yeah, it's cool in there.
That's great. Any questions, Councillor Westgate?
I think everybody's happy to see the ice go in, but I still am getting feedback from the Sunday night rec hockey about how they're going to work things. 15 minutes between games is just not enough. I can't even get my skates off that fast and out. So I was hoping, I don't know what we could do. Get one game over in Alvickston or put more room between the games. Have you done anything, Teresa?
I haven't received any feedback that 15 minutes wasn't long enough. It's exactly what they had last year for
they
both
made it
before and
work?
after. What's that? Sorry?
And that worked?
They made it work. So I haven't received that feedback from
Okay.
the Sunday Night Rec League. There more was, I believe, a concern about having to have scheduled time between their games, excessive time. So, but all of that is being put together for review.
Okay, any other questions? If not, then we will move on for a verbal update from Amanda Gubbles on the trap, neuter, and return service for stray cats in Watford.
Thanks, Mayor Rembert. So I just wanted to provide an update as we're closing out at least the primary season for this new partnership service delivery. And I did receive a report from Cat Chance, the volunteer organization that delivers this in our community. And they advised me that they have fixed 13 cats and taken 10 kittens and 1 adult in for adoption from the Watford community since our partnership began, which really isn't that long, just a couple months. In light of the, I think, success, we've received some positive feedback also on the program. The staff will be proposing in our 2022 budget a similar donation to support our informal partnership with Cat Chance. So I think it was a successful interim measure, but I wanted to share that with everyone. And of course, if you or anyone else has any different or similar feedback about the service they've received from Cat Chance, we'd be happy to hear it.
That is fantastic news. It's been a while since we've been working on that issue, so it's good to hear that we're making some progress there. Is there anything from the community that they should be doing? Like is there someone that they can contact if they do have a cat that's close to their house? Or
Yes, great question. So when we initiated the partnership, we did send out a flyer. So Cat Chance is best contacted through their own Facebook page, which is available online, and they have an address there. That's how it's best to get in touch with them. In terms of the community, I think stopping feeding the stray cats, I think, would be helpful, and also to ensure that any domestic cats that are outside have collars to ensure that they're not mistaken for strays and maybe picked up. The other thing is the organization is always looking for volunteers. So if there are community members local to Watford who are interested in participating in the program locally, also reaching out to Cat Chance would be appreciated because they are always looking for additional assistance.
great information. Thank you. All right, Council, we are going to move past delegations since they are a timed event and we're not quite there yet. And we're going to go to the accounts section and the GL report. Any questions or comments on that report? Do you need a mover and seconder to receive and file that? Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Westgate. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And we'll go on to the non-action correspondence. Was there anything that council would like to highlight from the non-action correspondence this evening? Seeing nothing, then we need a motion to receive and file the remainder of that. Thank you, Councillor Morris and Councillor Mitchell. All in favor? That is carried. We have no action correspondence tonight, so we're going to go down to 12A. of staff reports, the current municipal service levels and COVID-19 impacts. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that report. Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Westgate. Any questions or comments on that report? Councillor White. Oh, sorry. All right, if there's no questions or comments. All right, we will, all in favor of receiving and filing that. That is carried. We'll go to considerations for the resumption of in-person council meetings. Now, their staff is looking for council direction on this one. Does anyone have any ideas or suggestions based on the recommendations that are given there? Amanda.
Just a procedural note, if I may, Mayor Brownbouts, that since this was actually a tabled report from a previous meeting, prior to discussions, we do need a motion to lift the report from the table.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is good. We need a mover and a seconder to lift that report from the table. Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Morris. All in favor? That is lifted from the table. Thank you for that procedural correction. One thing I did note is that in the discussion that it wasn't mentioned that we could just continue on status quo as the Zoom meetings until such time as the new office is open, which I believe wouldn't cost anything as well.
Yeah, it's on there.
Is it on there?
Yeah.
Okay, then I didn't read it very well. Thank you. What does council want to do? Councillor Mitchell.
I'm in favor of the continuing the electronic meetings just because of, I think it said in our next procedural bylaw amendment, the analytics for the attendance that we've been getting online. I think to stop that would be a detriment. You know, I love this accessibility that we have going here, and if it's not going to cost us anything, let's just keep it cozy at home for now until the new digs are ready.
Do we have a seconder to that? Councillor White. Questions or comments? Councillor Morris.
The $2,000 that would be needed to have in-person meetings and still have the Zoom, can that be used for something else after we get into the new office? So it's just not a short term.
Yes, Councillor Morris, a great question. The technology that would allow live streaming of in-person meetings is portable. So it wouldn't be permanently fixed into the location of the meeting. So it could be used for other meetings in future, although we likely wouldn't need it for council chambers, but for other meetings, it would be available and potentially of use even to those who might rent the facility in the future.
Well, I was thinking of the rec committee meeting. We're getting quite a few followers on it, and it's usually wouldn't be in the council chambers, I wouldn't think. So I think it's a good piece of equipment to have, and I have no problem with the in-person meetings.
We just on the rec committee, so Councillor Morris, I agree. The same accessibility for that committee as for council is great, and people being able to follow that committee online is a great asset to us as a municipality. Aside from this particular tool, there might be some others that could support live streaming those future Parks and Recreation Committee meetings. So one is in practice in the past, we haven't held those meetings in council chambers, but we also didn't have a council chambers dedicated for quite some time. So we could move them to the council chambers when the new facility is ready. Alternatively, there will be other meeting rooms at the arena that I believe are planned to be fitted up with conference equipment. So whether it's this particular equipment that's suggested here or through another equipment means, I agree that we would work to continue to live stream those meetings.
Thank you.
Counselor Westgate, you're muted.
I just like to say, I, like Wayne, would love to get back into in-person meetings. I'm fine with the way it's going now, if this is what it has to be, but I look forward to in-person meetings again.
Is there any reason we can't have in-person meetings at the Warwick Hall, keeping our 6-foot distance?
So potentially, so in-person council meetings being held at a community center, our read of the provincial legislation at this point in time would mean that any member of council or the public who wish to enter that facility to view the meeting would be subject to the same provincial rules that are in place for other meeting and conference events, meaning your vaccination certificate and your ID would need to be provided. And then, of course, any additional health and safety measures we have in place, Councillor Morris, as you said, physical distancing and masking until separate would apply. But outside of those considerations, no, there is no, I guess, procedural or policy reason why we could not resume in-person meetings.
I do believe that there was a provision that if the space was being used for business, and maybe we could have staff look into it better, that it would not have to adhere to the same rules as if it was a social event in the recreation space, but I could be wrong.
We can certainly look into the legislation again. Upon initial read, that wasn't our understanding, but we can review again, definitely. And if I may, Mayor Rumbach, just on this line, I think it might be relevant. It is included in the next report, CL 2321, but in that report, I did make a recommendation that should council wish to resume in-person meetings or presume a hybrid model, say where some were in person and some were outside. I put some more thought to that since our last discussion, and I think it could be accommodated with the same kind of cost that's outlined in this report of about I'll say 3,000 to give me a buffer just for taxes. And it would be electronic participation by phone only. So no video, and then in person at the location, physically distanced. And in that model, I still believe that we could live stream our meetings. I will say it's not as clean as this view where you get to see little boxes of people. It's more like a rotating camera, so it rotates based on voice. And then, of course, the person who is participating electronically by phone wouldn't be visible, although certainly would be able to be heard. So in the kind of low cost, achieving the same goal model of a hybrid meeting until we have the new office, that was kind of the best solution that I came up with if the goal is to keep costs low and still be able to live stream.
I personally think, given the comfort level of everybody involved, I think we're best off to stay with Zoom meetings for now, based on the information we have at this time. That's my personal thought, but if council decides otherwise, then we will accommodate. So we do have a motion on the floor, and that is to stick with this format until the new office is running, and then we can address it then. All in favor of that motion? And opposed? That is carried. All right, thank you for everyone. I hope everybody had an opportunity to say their piece there. Didn't want to rush anybody, but we can go on to C, procedural bylaw amendments, electronic meeting participation. Again, it looks like we're seeking council's direction. Oh, there's a recommendation there. How does council want to proceed with that recommendation? Councillor Westgate?
I'm sorry, I'll move it.
Okay, and we've already discussed kind of the method going forward for now. So Councillor Morris, are you seconding that?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that? All in favor? That is carried. And do we have time for Public Works report? We'll look to Andrew, I think. All right, we will move on to that. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that report. Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Questions or comments? Andrew, is there anything you'd like to highlight for us tonight?
Just quickly, just the two highlights I'd like to point out. Warwick Street reconstruction. As you can see, construction's come along fairly well. Curbs are in, sidewalk shortly after, if the weather would hold up, and then pavement should be going down, and then laneways and boulevard restoration. Hickory Creek line rehabilitation, the very west end of Hickory Creek. Ditching's underway. Culvert replacements are underway, so that project's well underway as well. So those are kind of the two highlights I'd like to point out for this report.
Thank you. All in favor of receiving and filing that report? That is carried. All right, we have 2 minutes, but I think we should head up to our delegations because it'll take a minute or two, I think, to welcome them into the meeting. So first on the delegation list is Giovanni Spadafora, CPA for Baker Tilly Sarnia, and he's going to give us a presentation on the financial statements. Hello, how are you, Mr. Is it Spadafora?
Spadafora, yes. Hello, everyone.
Okay, great. Welcome to council meeting, and we're a little bit early, but I think we can probably turn it over to you.
Okay.
There's you have some slideshows or some slides that you wanted to bring up, I'm sure.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Okay, so I don't know, does anyone have it maybe that they can show beside here? Or?
Johnny, I was not quite ready for that, but if you want to begin, I will pull it up momentarily.
Okay, no problem. Well, as you're doing that, yeah, it's all summarized really in the statements, but we do have, I believe part of the package, the slide presentation, as well as the audited financial statements with the opinion and everything there. That it's been a couple years now since there's been some changes to all that, but the year-over-year detail for all the outlining for responsibilities as the auditor's responsibility of council and management, all of that is in line, and the opinion at the end of the day is the one that everyone was looking for, is an unqualified opinion at the end of the day. So I'm going to go through some of my slides here and kind of get started, and then maybe Amanda, whoever's running the slide deck, they can just, I'll kind of say when I'm switching over. So again, thank you. And again, I do, it's been a tougher year again, getting information, dealing with what we've been dealing with, kind of emulated last year to some degree. However, Trevor and his team was able to, of course, get me all the information I needed at the end of the day, and kind of, get the capital in line and all that's required to get these financial statements prepared. So the detail out of laws, as most of you might be aware, the kind of combining all of that as a consolidated portion of these statements, that does take time as well. Usually we're already past the deadline anyways when those are available. However, we are here now. The FAR has been filed, and it looks like I got the first slide up here. So let's go ahead to the second slide, and we'll get into some of the disclosure points here. And this is us at Baker Tilly. It is outlined in the forms and letters that we do provide every year. However, we do like to touch on a few things, communicate directly with council as to some of these details as part of the audit, as well as responsibilities and disclosure points, to make it clear that everyone is well aware of everything that goes into the audit. So first slide here, public sector accounting, it's its own thing, right? And we are auditing the municipality based on this framework. It has its own series of checklists and tests and framework that the financial statements do have to adhere to. And of course, we want them to be free from material misstatements. Municipalities do raise revenues to deliver services, and of course must be financially responsible. And the public sector entities prepare these statements using this framework and as a guideline, so that all municipalities can kind of be judged on the same way when they're looking at those factors. So the next slide, please. A little more on public sector accounting. It's the guidework. Like I said, it is responsible for budgeting, financial reporting, and the framework. The FIR, like I mentioned, the financial information return, is prepared for the province and made public record, which reports on financial and non-financial information, and it can confirm we are in compliance with the FIR being filed. And again, we talk about sustainability and all that detail, both short-term and long-term here, and adhering to these PSAB requirements produces relevant financial information and accountability for the decision-making for the Township of Warwick, as well as comparability with other municipalities. Next up is governance, and it's a combination of these processes and structures that are implemented by council and kind of to direct management. Just the next slide, please. Direct management monitor the activities of the municipality and toward the achievement of its financial sustainability goal. Of course, we do want financial statements to be prepared and reviewed, as well as throughout the year, there's budgets that are set and variance analysis that's reviewed, and that's part of the governance process as well. The next slide, sorry. We do want to promote appropriate ethics and values throughout the organization. We want to ensure that effective organizational performance for management and accountability. Communicating any potential risk or control information to the appropriate areas of the organization. And of course, governance includes coordinating the activities and communicating information amongst council, the external auditors being ourselves, and management. Next up is the internal controls that are developed and hopefully maintained throughout the organization. They refer to those policies, procedures, and processes that provide the organization with the checks and balances, helps to detect error, fraud, or theft, and provide any early warning signs of potential problems, but also creates efficiencies for the organization to run with. It also includes measures and practices that are used to mitigate exposures to risk. Of course, we are doing risk-based auditing as part of this process, and that's something that we always want to highlight based on different financial statement areas is the risk associated with those areas and how much work to do. So the internal controls also operate continuously and are put in place by council and management to be adhered to by all levels of the personnel in the organization, and provide that reasonable assurance we're looking for that the organization's objectives will be achieved, in this case, financial statements being prepared, but as well as meeting budget targets and whatnot based on benchmarks. The next slide, a little more on internal controls. So as external auditors, we assist in the review of the internal control policies and procurement, the policies and procurement policies. We do evaluate those as part of the audit process, and if at any time there is any need for it throughout the year for any refinement that can be done. And of course, our process is always independent of the preparation of any policy guidelines or advisory, and focuses on ensuring that the controls and procedures in place ensure best practices and protect the municipality from potentially fraudulent activity, identifying any steps that help prevent and deter and detect any wrongdoing, as well as just making sure that the accounting systems are working as necessary to produce financial statements and just kind of work for the day-to-day. The next slide is still on internal controls. So our review also looks, this is part of the audit as well, our review also looks at the efficiency and effectiveness of those controls and procedures in place, ensuring that there's no management override at any level, and that processes maintain appropriate segregation of duties, documentation, and authorization as necessary at each level across each department. Next, we get into our independence, and we do like to disclose this. We do need to disclose this. We do also disclose this as part of this package here that's based on our Canadian auditing standards, if anything were to impair or affect our judgment. Next slide. So in determining with relationships to report, these standards require us to consider the relevant rules related to, based on the interpretations of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. Just the next slide, please. Basically, some of the key items: holding any financial interest, directly or indirectly; holding any position, directly or indirectly, that gives us any influence or any responsibility to exert significant influence. Next slide on the list, of course, personal or business relationships of any immediate family, close relatives, and whatnot. Economic dependence on the client, of course, that's not the case. And provision of services in addition to the audit engagement. If we were to ever do any, they wouldn't affect our judgment. We'd make that very clear. But of course, I can confidently say that there's no impairment to our independence as part of the audit and the auditors and the audit team that worked on the job. Next slide here, our responsibilities as auditors, as stated in the engagement letter, but of course, just outlined here. Responsibilities to your municipalities to express an opinion on whether the financial statements present fairly in all material respects to the financial position, results of operations, and cash flows of the municipality in according with our accounting standards. An audit is performed to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance as to whether the statements are free of material misstatement. Due to inherent limitations of an audit, there is some unavoidable risk and some misstatements of the financial statements that potentially could not be detected if there's any intentional misstatement or concealment through collusion, even though an audit is properly planned and performed. And that's getting to the materiality standards. There's a threshold of dollar value that gets put to each job. Next slide here. So the risk assessment and the audit approach. Just to highlight a few things here that our procedures select are dependent on auditors' judgment and professional skepticism, including the assessment of the risk of material misstatement for the financial statements, whether due to fraud or error. Risk is also assessed for sometimes specific balances and at times transactions themselves to determine areas where audit testing should be increased. That would include any complex accounting transactions that might have throughout the year. An audit also includes evaluating the appropriateness of accounting policies used, the reasonableness of accounting estimates made by management, and the overall presentation of the statements. Now, just a key in here, that this is the latest kind of standard setting is kind of the standard the body wants to kind of hammer home audit estimates, and that's been the latest thing that they've been focusing in on. And so not so much with this organization, and we do a lot of subsequent testing to kind of confirm all our judgments for, let's say, accrued payables and useful life of assets. However, of course, capital assets are the big piece of these statements, and there is some estimates that go into the useful life calculations. So we do clearly state that. However, just to know, just so everyone knows that, we are taking that approach, and we've, increased some of our disclosures and kind of points around the audit to emphasize that estimate testing. And again, estimates are made by management. We are auditing. We do have at times journal entries we do prepare, but again, with our subsequent testing and kind of everything around the audit that we do, we have good comfort around the numbers that are in the financial statements here. The next slide, audit approach highlights. You've seen this a few years now, but we do examine on a test basis evidence supporting amounts of disclosures in the statements, including departmental budgets. We do substantive testing and analytical review. It's utilized to attain the appropriate level of evidence we need in these statements. And all PSAB accounting standards are to be met, including accrual accounting, and that tangible capital assets are set up on the statements of financial position and amortized annually, which we'll see in a little bit. And overall changes in the net financial assets or debt reported based on the accumulation of surpluses or deficits in operations, capital purchasing, and changes to reserve balances are all recorded. And council's responsibilities next, before we do finally get to some statements here. We do expect council to make known to the auditor any issues of disclosure, corporate governance, fraud, illegal acts, any non-compliance with laws or regulatory requirements that are known to them, where such matters may impact the financial statements or independence. providing guidance and direction to the auditor on any additional work that the auditor feels should be undertaken in response to issues raised or concerns expressed, and making these inquiries as appropriate into the findings of the auditor with respect to corporate governance, management conduct, cooperation, information flow, and system of internal controls that are in place. And finally, council's responsibilities, reviewing draft financial statements like we're doing here today, preparing by management, including presentation and disclosures, any supporting notes or schedules for accuracy, completeness, and appropriateness. I know, of course, you trust your team, your management team, to kind of prepare all that information, have that for us as now we got to this point, we're auditing or we've finished the audit, we have the statements. But if required, any meetings with the auditor prior to release and approval of statements to review the audit disclosure and any compliance issues, of course, are always on the table. Okay, so the next slide, we highlight some financial statement areas that we consider are maybe a little more important. We'll go through a few of these through the remaining slides. However, maybe not all of them. And so we just wanted to call to some of the more significant areas of these statements in this kind of list. But the next slide over, we do have finally the statement of financial position. I hope everyone can see that there. It's a little small, but essentially at the end of the day, we do have our financial assets and our liabilities here. We can see in our financial assets, and I do have some notes here, so I'll kind of elaborate on a few of them, but cash and investments have grown. They're supporting the reserves that we'll see a few slides over. So that would be the first two lines of the financial assets. In the investments, I believe, yes, we have an increase in principal, of course, but also in the statement of unrealized measurements there, the unrealized gain of about $230,000. So there's approximately, again, this is as of December 2020, which is I know 10 months removed, 9 months removed now, but there was about a 10% on the unrealized gain that was earned on that money, which is not included in that number. The taxes receivable, just kind of that, slice of time where things are at. It's kind of in line with expectations, a little lower than last year. Accounts receivable, I'll get into my notes here. So we have an increase from prior year. We have a couple of bigger totals as accounts receivable as of December. We had a COVID restart amount of almost 500,000 and waste management owed 2 payments, so about 700,000. So that'd be the increase over last year's kind of area where it was at based on regular, we'll call them trade payables or regular payables, or sorry, receivables, I apologize, receivables. Other receivables below it there has a big jump as well. And in that we have the long-term receivables. So we have the maintenance and drain construction receivables, as well as a long-term receivable with the Watford Economic Development Corporation. That's sitting at about 1.6 million. The receivables I said previously are 1.2. And that would be the kind of total for that account there. And then the investment in Blue Water Power and investment in municipal corporations, again, those change. There's no change in the corporations. We did not apply any gain or loss to that. We did clear that off. So just to elaborate on the investment in the Development Corp for the first project that kind of closed off in 2020. There was a suspense balance that was cleared in the year that represented the losses of approximately 200,000. So we cleared the operating balance. Last year we did not show, last year we had losses, this year's we had gain, but we did clear the equity out. And that's been cleared off for the end of the 2020 in these statements. Investment in Blue Water Power above that, essentially that's the dividends and the change in equity or ownership. That's how that changes for the year. Those are all the assets, the 12,771,000. Liability side, fairly straightforward. We have our payables and we have our bit of accrued interest on the outstanding debt. We have the debt being paid down. And this year, no deferred revenue. That's mainly that is primarily the gas tax, and it was used up in the year. So there's no deferred revenue or obligatory reserve on that account. So the financial assets and liabilities, one less the other, shows a net financial surplus of $9 million, just over $9 million. And then the non-financial capital assets of 51 million. And you'll see how all that breaks down on the accumulated surplus note 11 there. But essentially increase in the financial assets, which is great, supporting the reserves, and then a decrease in the liabilities. Well, that's always good too. And then reduction of debt, reduction of payables. So good trend lines there to see, but again, it's a slice in time as of December 31st. The next slide has a statement of change in net assets. So if you recall, or just remember that 9.1 million, you'll see that at the bottom of this statement. We basically build that up through the accumulation of surpluses, as well as some changes for, sale of tangible assets, the adjustment in laws. And just to highlight the adjustment in laws change, the flow adjustment was very small. I just did the adjustment for the capital asset side on the opening adjustment. Of course, we have to consolidate based on the flow rate for the ending adjustments. It went from 2.23 to 2.33. So just kind of a tenth of a percentage point there changing. So not too much of a number change, but there are big numbers that are included in the infrastructures on laws. So it does affect our statements. And the flow, so the 2.33 flow for 2020 consolidates, of course, for cash, AR, receivables, payables, reserves that are a portion of owned reserves in laws, and the capital assets. So you can see there where we get the 9.1 million of the net financial surplus for the year. And then the next slide will be the statement of operations and the accumulated surplus as well here. So this is your income statement showing sources of revenues and then the expenditures by department. Fairly straightforward here. Some of the notable decreases, unfortunately, due to COVID would be in some of the user charges and some programs related to that. You see that in the recreation expense. But overall, we do have a surplus of the 3.764. Our laws adjustment for affected assets there, so our annual surplus of 3.9 million, adding to the previous surplus, overall aggregate surplus of 56. So that gets us to our accumulated surplus of 60,334,000. And on the next slide, we do have our note there, note 11, which I like to always show because it does kind of show the sources of the surpluses. So the equity in accounts, so the big one being tangible capital assets. We have our unfunded debt, our equity in Blue Water Power, that all makes up of our net surpluses. And then we have our reserves set aside by council, be it by different areas, fire and asset management, working funds and whatnot. We did put the surplus this year. So we have the capital projects line item is absorbing the surplus for the year. So you can see last year on the surplus line, we'd had a deficit of the $296,000. And we have nothing this year. So what we do is we provision for that to reserves, and that's the significant increase in the capital projects. Just to put that in numbers, so the deficit was cleared, current year surplus of about 1.8 million. And so overall added to reserve $1.5 million there. So that would be the overall surplus recorded and added to reserves. And it was provision this year, so it's not showing as a town surplus officially. We brought it to zero. The next slide, maybe before I do that, just kind of reviewing again the rest of the reserves, the dedicated reserves for the water and sewer also been bolstered there. And that 60,334,000 you can see on the bottom line there, consistent number throughout the statements. That's the overall accumulated surplus, how it's made up based on the equities and the money reserves set aside by council, and then the water and sewer. So the next one is just some detail around the invested in capital assets by type of asset. We do consolidate laws in here as well. So there's a jumble of numbers. At the end of the day, the 51,233,000 that you saw on the previous slide, that's what is the net book value, so the cost of the assets less accumulated amortization. This is, of course, to meet the PSAB standards. You don't budget for the amortization, but it is part of the statements. Some additions that are part of this year, the Sustainable Ball Diamond, and you can see the list there, a pumper truck, Victoria Street, and some bridge and culvert work. And then the assets under construction, there's about 1.3 million. We do have some of those items there that are part of that will get recognized next year or in future years. So that's the end of my notes. The next slide over, we kind of kept it on there. It's the COVID-19 impact. Last year, we talked about it in a subsequent point of view. This year, we're talking about it as a what happened point of view, the impact. Not too much changing on here. We kept it fairly similar as to what may have happened and what kind of happened after the statements were prepared, but it's no longer subsequent. We just been dealing with it through 2020 and now into 2021. So we just wanted to share that as this being a note still in the financial statements. So that's it. The next slide says thank you and any questions. I know that's a a short amount of time to go through a lot of detail. So hopefully my summary did enough. However, of course, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take any.
Is there any questions, Council? Councillor Morris.
You're on mute.
Yeah.
The value you have on land is only 1.1 million. Where do you get that figure? Like a farm property we own where the lagoons are, I think would be a lot higher value than that.
That'll never be an appreciated value.
Okay.
It's going to be kind of a historical setup when PSUB would have been introduced. Now, maybe are you saying the increase in the year, or yeah? So the beginning balance there, yeah, the 1.13, that'd be a historical value, and then there was some additions this year. But there is a citywide tool that does have like the valuation of the historical costs of all the land assets, but it's not a fair market value.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Wow, you're getting off easy tonight. Trevor.
Yes, I am.
John, you around to the office tomorrow?
Yes, I am.
I'll run over and pick up the statements for signature.
Yes, I'll have everything ready for signatures, Trevor. So yeah, that works if you can come by tomorrow.
Okay, I'll grab them about 2 o'clock, somewhere around there. I'll check my schedule, send you an email.
Perfect. And yeah, just echo starting out. I see Linda here, I didn't see her before, so I do thank her for all her assistance in another kind of difficult year, and Trevor as well. Your team getting me everything I needed. I know it wasn't easy, and we had some delays here and there, but we did get it done, and again, everything's in compliance. I do owe you the okay on the roll forward, right, Linda? So maybe we'll chat again tomorrow. Okay, Trevor can pick up some of those forms. I'll chat with you tomorrow. We'll get that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. No problem. Yep.
All right, just for housekeeping, do we need a mover and a seconder to receive and file that report?
To approve them as presented, Mayor Rembrandt.
Thank you. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Morris, seconded by Councillor White. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. I'll let you get on with your evening.
Great. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. And council, we are going to go right to the next delegation, which is Kenneth Melanson. He's here for an update on Warwick's official plan process and feedback. So we'll give Ken a minute or two to get into the meeting. Good evening, Mr. Melanson. I apologize. We're a few minutes behind, but not too bad. I'm going to turn the meeting right over to you if you're ready.
No worries. You can count me on your YouTube analytics. I've been following along. So I'm really going to keep this short. So good evening, Your Worship, members of council. It's good to see you again. Just for the public, my name is Kenneth Melanson. I'm the manager of planning and development services for the county of Lambton. I'm really just here to have a follow-up discussion because, as council is aware, we spent about a year, actually a little over a year ago, I arrived with the county and you had begun the process of going through the official plan update to bring your plan into conformance to a whole bunch of changes to the Planning Act, the provincial policy statement, and the county's official plan. And we went through that process and you adopted that, and the county approved your OPA that you approved, and it's now in effect. So we're now working to put together a consolidation so that we actually have a version to work off of. But what I wanted to do was, as many of you may be aware, this was kind of a first for the county in terms of acquiring consultant services to help us get through a policy update and to do this piece of work. Normally, we've done these things internally. And because of the fact that we've seen a tremendous amount of growth in our applications and inquiries, but not necessarily a corresponding staff resource increase up until this year, we were not in a position that we could do that in-house. In addition to yourselves, 2 other municipalities also felt that they needed to have their OPs done right away because they were seeing growth and were concerned not to have decisions come along that were not necessarily compliant to the updates. And so I just wanted to pop in and let you know that everything has been approved, but also just seek some feedback from council in terms of the process, because we're looking at the possibility of treating this as a pilot project and looking at doing a phase 2, because quite frankly, we were able to accomplish 3 OP updates despite a pandemic in 14 months, which is 3 times the work in half what the normal internal staff time would be, which is tremendous. And so, as a preview of coming attractions for you, Mayor Rombouts, there's a report coming to council, and I wanted to get some feedback from Warwick Council on, did you like the process? What was good about the process? Was there anything that you felt could have been changed or maybe was deficient in the process? I know, I'll give you an example. One of the pieces of feedback we received from Point Edward Council, and it wasn't really a comment related to the process, but just about participation in general and the fact that they didn't have a lot of people participate. So comments like that for us to think about in how we go into the next phase and do the next OP updates and try to learn from this and say, are there some tools that when we go out to RFP to pick consultants that maybe we should think about having them have and things like that. So that's really why I'm here.
Great, thank you. Council, do you have any feedback for Mr. Melanson tonight? I think the process went fairly smoothly given the fact that it took us 10 years to get through the county one. So that's a good thing. The quicker we can get
1/10 of the process is always good.
It is, yeah. Staff, do you have any comments on the process?
Thanks, Mayor Rombouts. From my perspective, being involved with Ken a bit on the OP, I thought that the process was went well. I think it was well organized, and I do see the benefit also of having a solely focused consultant on the project, because it, Ken and his team in planning and our team in Warwick are all working on many things at once, and I think having a resource that was dedicated to this and would say, okay, reminder, we need to have a meeting, we need to talk about this is the deadline. I personally found that really helpful to have a kind of a driver behind the project management side. So I have only good things to say. I thought it was a great process for us.
I think from council's standpoint, our priority is definitely the developments that are occurring within our community. So anything that takes away from staff time in getting those developments approved is not a good thing. So having the outside people that could help with the process of the official plan gave our personal internal staff more opportunity to focus on the things that they needed to focus on, which is important.
That's exactly one of the comments that our actual discussions in-house with staff came back with, was we have a lot on our plate. The fact that we had these consultants, and then myself and my predecessor were the ones who were doing the project management with the consultant, and they were acting as subject matter experts rather than having to do the day-to-day project management. They felt was quite good, and took a lot of that pressure off. So this is to hear council express that. I'm pleased, because it's a similar opinion I'm hearing consistently. So
I think as far as the general public, we have an amazing public that's always willing to work on any kind of projects. I know we've had several different workshops and things like that where the public has come out and given their opinion. I think COVID kind of put a damper on that, and I don't think it was so much a process issue as much as the COVID issue, right? Where we have to meet electronically as opposed to meeting in person. It definitely put limitations on the ability to our public to give their comment. Did we have a lot of comments from the public throughout the process?
Through your worship, we did have a comment table. So there were individuals that provided some feedback in terms of potential changes and things like that. I don't think yours was the smallest in terms of the number. I think you landed right in the middle, and then Plimpton, Wyoming ended up with a significant amount, and then Point Edward ended up sort of on the opposite end. But they still had feedback as well. So I agree. I think from my perspective, obviously the pandemic had an impact in terms of the ability of the public to participate, but also having to adjust to this new means of participation. But it didn't seem to prevent people from being involved. And also, what I think is quite interesting was the fact that all three plans did get delayed because of the pandemic, because you guys had started, and then of course the lockdowns and everything happened. But despite that, we still got it done in 14 months. And in fact, Plimpton, Wyoming, they wanted to do a more detailed review. So there was a bit of a delay to prepare additional materials and have an extra meeting. And they still managed to do it in 14 and a half. So, those numbers to me are still outstanding.
I personally found it beneficial to have the two other municipalities go through the process with us, because there were times where Bev and Lonnie and I could talk about the process and what to expect and what happened at their meetings and things like that. So it was interesting to have them to kind of use as a sounding board or throughout the process. It was interesting.
Yes, and I remember one of the meetings where that occurred and just sort of listening in. And I actually agree with you. I think that is a good way where a municipality that might not have been through this in a while or have dealt with this process, there might be some trepidation, for lack of a better term, of the process, or some intimidation of the process, because it is quite significant, and this is a big project. And to hear from the others, it gives you that comfort and sort of the feeling that, oh, okay, no, it's going essentially the way it is for the others. So
yeah. Any other comments from council or staff before we let Mr. Melanson go for the evening? Seeing none, once again, I thank you for all your help with this process, and we look forward to getting all these other developments off the ground.
Hard to believe it's been a year. So
it is, yes.
Yeah. And I promised Ms. Gobbles I'd keep it to less than 10 minutes, so I think I have to get out of here now.
Great.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening. Appreciate the feedback.
Thank you.
And council, we are going to welcome our next delegate, who is Frank Calipari. And he's here to give us updates on the construction and timelines for the new municipal office and the completion of final grading on Scenic Court. So we'll give Ms. Gubbles a moment or two to welcome Frank in.
Hello.
Hi, how are you, Frank?
Is it working?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right.
So we're running a few minutes behind, so I'm going to turn the meeting right over to you to give us the updates that you're here to give us.
So the updates regarding downtown?
Yes.
We'll start with first. So we have a Brick Lane crew showing up this week. Interior stuff will be completed for the shell portion within the next 2 weeks. And the exterior will probably be done within the month, I would say. So we're thinking that the interior fit up will start probably around November, early November, late October. We do have a permit for it, and we are doing some electrical and stuff that we would do in the interior fit up, we're doing in conjunction with the shell portion to save us a little bit of time. So we're about a month behind from our original schedule, which was mid to late September. I hate to use the excuse, but you know, we did have to have skeleton crews out there during the shutdown for the two months or whatever it was. The CRU building in the middle, our building in the middle there, basically sat for that whole time because we couldn't have anybody working there during that time. So Libro's open, which I'm sure everybody knows. And the parking lot, we're gonna have curb and first coat of asphalt done before the winter. So that's our plan, clean up everything on the outside and just work on the inside.
Okay, Libro looks fantastic. I know I've talked to the staff there and they're very happy. Is there any questions for Mr. Calipari tonight from staff or council? Councillor Morris.
Frank, when do you expect us to be in the new building?
Well, I'm still finalizing some pricing and a couple little drawings here and there for some of the security and stuff like that. But I mean, we're planning on early spring is what my projections are for right now.
Early spring. So not February.
Well, it could be. I don't know what's going to happen through the winter. Our main goal right now is to get that asphalt in and curb, and the interior stuff we can't unfortunately start until he's done his shell portion, because we can't have two contractors on site for ministry reasons. It's just a lot cleaner if he's just out of there. We will have to segregate the municipal building away with fencing from the other project in the middle to keep a separate construction site, because Castell Homes is doing the interior fit up there. So that's just kind of the process. So I mean, I think everything should go okay. I have HVAC guys ready to go. They're asking me to get in there already, but with the way the contractors go, we can't have him in there with the guy that's doing the other portion for the shell. So it's not really easy to catch up any time there. So we'll see what happens, but I'm thinking April is my guess right now. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Amanda.
Frank, are you experiencing trouble getting trades?
Trades are just really busy. They're out there, but we're being delayed on. They're being delayed on other jobs, which delays us. The contractors that I have kind of set up for the interior portion are my regular guys, I guess I could say, as long as we all agree on that. Your contractors so far for the security and the audio stuff seem like they'll be okay with timelines. But I'm not having really issues with the actual trades in general, like finding the trades. They're being delayed on other projects. And most of it's because of material delays. You know, everyone's going back to go install something that showed up, 3 weeks later. It takes away from their timelines, and that's what we're dealing with through the housing. And I'm sure commercial, the regular commercial guys are having the same issues.
Councillor Westgate.
Right, did you say the units on the roof are not part of the main building? They're in the fit.
Yeah, but the interior ductwork, I guess,
Oh,
may
but
not
the
be the
units
same
are part of
contract.
the main building.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I will make another comment if I can. So Amanda and Angela, the interior designer, I guess, or designer, they pretty much have summed everything up. We are working through a couple little tweaks that we may add or delete. The windows in the offices and stuff like that. I'm getting priced right now, and there's just little things, but Amanda and Angela have made all their decisions they had to make up until this point, and everything went well on that. They were way ahead of my schedule, which was great. So it's more of now just getting the shell done. So.
Any other questions? Maybe you can move on to the next part of your update. Sorry.
So Scenic Court. So Scenic Court, we met with Spreets there on site on Thursday, I believe. And we've all kind of determined that the grading was done as per the plan. The adjustments, I guess I'll call them adjustments that Chris Learman asked us to make were very minor, and I guess redundant. He had Owen there, one of his site guys, and we discussed it on site. They wouldn't really make any difference to any sort of water flows or anything there. I will say that it was dry as a bone. That whole site was dry as a bone, even on top of that berm. After all that rain we had, I'm not sure how much Watford got, but I know London got close to 100 mil. So it was dry. The grass wasn't dead. There was no standing water anywhere. The catch basins were empty for the most part, other than the the portions at the bottom of the catch basins that hold water strategically. And you know, like the grading was, we were an inch off in 3 spots for the most part. One of the homeowners, his name is Twan, lot 72, I believe. I can't remember the municipal number, but he did trench a little spot that kind of filled in with some silt at one point. But other than that, the grading was pretty much within an inch and a half. The inch and a half was the worst spot we saw of a little bump or a dip in the land. But again, the grass is growing. There's no pooling water, ponding water anywhere in that back section. So backing onto the existing neighborhood.
Councillor Westgate?
I did have one call after that one day of heavy rain saying that the existing catch basin that was in the corner before you started, there was water around it, and they said the catch basin was above the ground. Now, this lady called me, and then she called me the next morning saying, don't bother coming down, everything's fine, it's gone away.
Yeah.
But she said the catch basin was high, and I meant to get down there and look at it. I never did. I take it it's to the right grade or right.
Yeah, so the catch basin was existing. We Spreets, I believe, designed the water flows to be obviously higher than the catch basin, so that's what we followed. I know that the one backyard that backs, I think that catch basin was put in there for that one home that backs kind of onto it off of Nauvoo. I don't know the person's name. I think they exchanged hands. I think the house sold or something like that
Yeah, a couple
recently.
times.
Yeah, and there was pooling water there. I did talk to my homeowner in the corner there at lot 73, I believe, or 74. He's got tons of gardening back there. He says, I have no issues with water here. There was water pooling in that back corner, but within a couple hours it was gone. So we did flush out those lines. Both catch basins that are back there got flushed out. I'm not sure if Andrew reviewed, maybe Andrew can comment if he saw the cameras. I think we had those cameraed as well. If he saw the video footage of that, if there was any issues, but I mean, they seem to be working well. And especially with all that rain that we had, I was shocked to see how dry it was back there. So the berm is working. Just so everybody knows, the berm is working. It's not the most, it doesn't look the best, but it is definitely working, keeping the water away from those other backyards.
Andrew, did you have any comments about that, or you just were kind of conceding?
Yep. Yeah, I did review, and there were definitely no issues with the videoing. So they were flush, clean, no issues.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thanks so much, Frank, for your help. And
you're welcome.
We will look forward to your next update.
Nice to see everyone.
You too.
Bye.
All right, we are going, is everyone good to continue powering through here? We're good. All right, we're going to go down to 13A, which is the minutes of the Development Committee meeting of September 27th of 2021. We need a mover and a seconder to receive and file those minutes. Councillor Morris and Councillor Westgate, thank you. All in favor? That is carried. And if there's no new business, then we will go on to the closed meeting portion of the meeting for the reasons listed on the agenda tonight. Need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor White. Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. And once again, we wish everyone a good evening. We will be returning into open session just to close out the meeting and do bylaws. So we won't be returning to recording or to YouTube.